Hey, I'm Joe Connolly of WCBS 880 News to bring you one of the people who has the best insights into small and mid-sized businesses in New York of anyone. Corey Schouten is the editor-in-chief of Crain's New York Business, which has been covering New York City business news since the 1980s and is still in print like it used to be at all of the newsstands and, of course, online too. Producer Neil A. Caruso will join us as well. Corey, what are one or two of the trends in city businesses recently that have caught your eye the most?
Well, we're keeping an eye on the return of tourism and business travel, which of course are critical to the city's economy. Infrastructure investment, housing is always a perennial focus. And then I think having the city catch up to some of the trends in terms of hiring coast to coast. In 2023, the city is on pace to hit its pre-pandemic jobs total, which has taken it a bit longer than other parts of the country.
And how about in terms of small and mid-sized businesses, Corey? Where are they in their recovery in terms of sales and headcounts, best as you can tell?
As far as what we're hearing from small and mid-sized businesses, is most of them, New York, in particular, New York businesses are an optimistic and entrepreneurial bunch, right? And so, for the most part, what we're hearing is a lot of optimism around what's ahead. I think they're expecting they see more opportunities for growth, for bringing in revenue. The catch there is that small and mid-sized businesses are seeing their costs increase substantially, including their labor costs. Inflation is really affecting. They're looking at the macro picture like everyone else. But I think on balance, they're seeing an opportunity for a soft landing for the economy, which is, of course, good for businesses of all size.
That's surprising, especially in light of the Partnership for New York City saying last week that they think the new normal for the foreseeable future is going to be 56% office occupancy. That's unbelievable, yet business goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had a forced experiment in hybrid work, and I think from all of the industries that we cover are exploring what this means, particularly real estate. So of course, real estate will always be a huge topic for Crain's New York Business. By the way, it's cranesnewyorkbusiness.com. We are very digitally oriented, so get your real estate daily, get your regular real estate updates from Crain's. But that industry in particular is very attuned to what these changes mean, right? Office owners are updating their properties, so they're very modern. They're very adaptable for a flexible hybrid work environment. And also those owners of older office buildings in the city are looking at residential conversions. And of course, policymakers, city officials are also looking at ways to enable these conversions so that, right now there's an office glut, but there's not enough housing in the city. So those two things can work together and kind of give us all a path forward.
And I can tell business owners, you know a lot about what's going on in the city. But if you look at cranes.com, cranesny.com,
cranesnewyork.com.
you will see so many things of interest that you had no idea about that may affect you. Neil, here's Neil with a few questions.
Yeah, Joe and Corey, nice to connect with you today. It seems with this hybrid work, employees really had leverage for a couple of years. Is that shifting now? I mean, we've seen layoffs now in the tech sector. Are employers have more leverage because of these economic headwinds that you've mentioned? I mean, inflation taking hold, and we're not in a recession technically, but I'd imagine that businesses are feeling the pain of that and forcing employees to come back to the office.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Even over the last few weeks, I would have given a slightly different answer here. The atmosphere is so uncertain, and of course, uncertainty is always difficult for businesses. It's an opportunity, but there's also risks in there. And I would say one thing that we're watching closely in terms of a storyline is whether those tech layoffs that we've seen, especially in the big tech companies, spread to other firms in other industries. What we're seeing so far, the trend that we've reported on as recently as this week, is that a lot of companies are seeing this as an opportunity to go hire some tech talent that has been really impossible to hire, has been outside of their budget. But with some of the cutbacks in tech, other companies are snapping those people up. And And I think last week's jobs report, which of course you covered, it was a surprise to the upside. There's a lot of strength in this labor market overall, and so far that slack from those layoffs has been picked up. I'd say a lot of CEOs are kind of hopeful that there'll be a little more balance there in that labor relationship. We're hearing that for sure. I'm not sure if they're quite, if it's tipping one direction or the other yet. It seems to be, very specific based on industries.
Corey, where do you see the growth right now? I mean, is it shifting away from tech into other areas? 2023 seems to be much different than 2022 so far.
Yeah, we're looking. Another one of our core coverage areas is healthcare. We really own that space. Really proud of our Health Pulse project, our product. It's a daily email newsletter that just tells you everything you need to know about the health space. We're seeing a lot of growth in life sciences investments. We are still seeing in the technology space as well. We're seeing some companies that are raising money, which has been difficult. A lot of speculative companies have been unable to raise venture capital, but they're getting back to some old school fundamentals, right? We're actually talking about profitability for some of these companies, and the ones that are profitable and that are running a conservative business with growth opportunities are able to raise money even in this difficult environment.
We hear so much about the growth of business in the boroughs outside of Manhattan. What can you tell us about that? We hear it's significant and strong. Do you and your reporters find that as well, Corey?
Absolutely. It's a great observation, Joe, and it's very true. And I think this ties back to your earlier question about the return to office. More people are spending more time in the boroughs. They're spending time at home. They don't need to come into Manhattan every day of the week, whatever office district they used to work at. And so they're spending more money and more time out there. And also, I think that's led to a lot of entrepreneurship. When people spend time from home, they're cutting out hours of their commute. They're more likely to start a business. They're more likely to serve kind of a community. So I think what we're seeing is, like, over time, more of this integration of work and life into individual places.
Corey, what are some of the types of businesses that you're seeing popping up in these neighborhoods?
A lot of them are more service oriented or entrepreneurial. They're taking advantage of like a work from anywhere digital space, right? So they might be like a small business that is serving other businesses, or it might be a neighborhood oriented thing, a retail shop, a restaurant, something that is really taking advantage of that that daytime population that didn't used to be there before. I'd also add that we did a survey of small and mid-sized business leaders, and they gave us like some pretty optimistic sentiment overall. So 2/3 of them expect revenue to rise in 2023, and the same proportion, however, expect cost to rise. And you asked earlier about staffing. I think this one was kind of interesting. So half of those we surveyed expect to keep the same staffing, 40% expect to grow, and only 10% expect to pull back. And by the way, for context, that's referring to the leaders of small and mid-sized businesses. So I think it shows that those job cuts in big tech companies aren't necessarily translating down to other companies just yet.
That's great news so far. Sometimes I say to business owners that I enjoy covering business news because business owners are optimists. And they usually say, I'm not an optimist, because they're actually are optimistic, but they're very cautious. They're very smart, so they don't like the word optimistic. How's Crane's doing, Corey?
We're doing really great. So we're growing. We grew audience last year. And I think we're more essential than ever. I like to tell folks that what we're doing, what you learn from us, is you're going to understand how the future is shaping up for power, money, and property in New York City. It is the greatest city in the world to cover for business. Our culture, our vibe is entrepreneurial. Optimistic. I don't have a problem with optimistic, but I think opportunistic is really important too. And I think New Yorkers will find a way. And I think there's a couple big stories in that vein that we're interested in covering this year too. There's a big push underway, like a lot of people fighting for this casino in Manhattan, which is a major story that we're covering. There are a lot of players. All the big real estate players are looking at that. Legalized marijuana is reshaping the retail environment, and a lot of people are trying to kind of get into that space, such that I think, in New York we had people so enthusiastic about that they got out ahead of it, and now the city is having to rein back and figure out how to shut down a lot of these unauthorized shops.
But you are growing. That's great to hear. That you don't know it, but before I met you a long time ago, you wrote a column. I keep items about the news industry because we're in it. And it was so good, Corey, that actually I saved it from my media file. And you wrote that helping you understand and navigate changes in business will affect you, your business, and your city. We also want you to enjoy what you read in Cranes, to learn something new, to connect with interesting and ambitious people. And I said that's such a great broad definition of what the news should be. We're both in the business of keeping local news. And it's great to hear that you're hiring.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you saving that. And it's so important. And it's a good reminder that, we have to bring joy to this, right? I mean, this work these communities are like where we live and work, and places that we care deeply about. And I think that's really where we're connecting is when we're giving people, like you say, something that's interesting, insightful, surprising, they're not expecting, but also explains how the world works. I think of businesses, when I'm teaching students, I think about business news as like it's just as interesting or more interesting than sports. You have big personalities, you have a lot of strategy, and you have like an audience, so all of those things come together, and I think it's such a like I say, it's a great city to cover business.
And business news is actually like a sports call-in radio station, because business owners will discuss business scenarios for just as long as callers to the fan will talk about potential trades of one employee or another. It's all the same in that way. And my final point about joy, even when the news is economically bad or generally bad, I still always try to include at least one upbeat item in every business report, just to encourage people and to give them a little hope and say, hey, here's this little company and they found the strangest way you ever heard of boosting revenues or increasing market share or whatever it is. So on that note, we joyful news people with the economy so far will say thank you for watching. Great to talk to you, Corey.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.